Hmm. The morning my daughter told me I was living too well, I was standing in her kitchen making coffee. Coffee I had bought, in a machine I had paid for, in a house where my name was nowhere on the deed, but my money was in every single wall. She did not look up from her phone when she said it. Mom, honestly, you don't need that big house anymore. It's just you. You could downsize, free up some cash, help us out more consistently. I stood there holding the coffee pot and I did not say a word. Not because I had nothing to say, but because something shifted in me right then. Something quiet, something that had been waiting a long time to move. My name is Dorothy. I am 67 years old. I was a school librarian for 31 years in Clarksville, Tennessee, and I raised two children mostly on my own after my husband passed from a heart attack when our kids were still in middle school. I did not remarry. I did not take vacations. I drove the same Buick for 11 years. I clipped coupons until my fingers knew the crease by heart. I did all of that so my children would not feel the weight of what we had lost. My son Marcus turned out fine. He lives in Nashville with his wife and calls me every Sunday without fail. He never once asked me for money after he turned 22. He said, "Mama, you already gave me everything I needed." I still cry when I think about that. My daughter Renee is a different story. Renee is 41. She married a man named Craig 8 years ago. Craig works in sales. At least that is what he tells people. The truth is that Craig has had 4 different jobs in those 8 years and has never once been the one bringing home enough to matter. Renee works as a dental hygienist, which pays decently, but somehow between the two of them they could never quite make things add up. That is where I came in. It started small, the way these things always do. A car payment here, a medical bill there. Renee called me crying once because they were 2 months behind on their mortgage and she was too ashamed to tell anyone. I wired the money before she finished the sentence. I did not hesitate. She was my child. You do not hesitate for your child. But that was year 1. By year 3, I was paying their car insurance, both cars. By year 4, I was covering their monthly grocery delivery, their streaming subscriptions, Renee's gym membership, and Craig's golf club dues. Golf club dues. I want you to sit with that for a moment. I kept a record. Not because I planned to use it against anyone. I kept records the way a librarian keeps records. Out of habit, out of the belief that information matters, and that someday it might need to be found. When I went back through those records the night after the coffee pot conversation, I counted carefully. Line by line, month by month. 8 years, 94 separate recurring payments. 94 things that existed in my budget that had nothing to do with my life and everything to do with theirs. I sat at my kitchen table until almost 2 in the morning. I did not cry. I made a list. I should tell you about the house, because the house is important. 4 years ago, Renee called me and said she and Craig had found their dream home, a 4-bedroom in a neighborhood called Willowbrook Estates, the kind of neighborhood with a gate and a fountain and mailboxes that look like small houses themselves. The mortgage was more than they could qualify for on their own. "We just need you to co-sign, Mom. That's all. You won't have to pay anything. It's just your name." I co-signed. I also quietly made up the difference between what they qualified for and what the bank required in reserves. $32,000. I told myself it was an investment in my grandchildren's stability. Renee and Craig have 2 kids, Tyler, who was 6 at the time, and a baby named Sophie. I love those babies. I still do. That is the part that makes all of this so complicated. The love never stopped, even when the clarity arrived. After I co-signed and after I wired the reserves, I assumed I would be welcomed into that house like family. I had a key. I used it sometimes on weekends to bring things over. Fruit from the farmer's market, books for the kids, a casserole because I knew Renee worked late on Thursdays. About 6 months in, Greg changed the garage code without telling me. When I mentioned it to Renee, she said, "Oh, Craig just wants us to feel like it's our space, Mom. You understand?" I said I understood. I did not understand. The coffee pot conversation was on a Tuesday in March. By Thursday, I had made some decisions. I want to be clear about something. I did not act out of anger. Anger is loud and it makes mistakes. What I felt that Tuesday morning was something quieter. It was the feeling you get when you have been reading a book for a long time and you finally understand what it has actually been about. The book had been about one thing, and I had been telling myself it was about something else entirely. I called my bank on Wednesday. I did not call Renee. I spoke with a woman named Patricia in the accounts department, and I explained that I needed to review every automatic payment and transfer linked to my checking and savings accounts. Patricia pulled up the list. I already knew the number, but hearing it read back to me out loud, 94, made it real in a different way. I asked Patricia to flag every single one. Then I called my attorney. His name is Gerald Hutchins, and he has handled my affairs for 15 years. I told him about the cosign. I told him I wanted to understand what my exposure was and what my options were. He told me some things I did not want to hear and some things I was glad to finally know. After I got off the phone with Gerald, I sat in my reading chair, the one by the window that looks out at my backyard, and I thought about 31 years of getting up at 6 in the morning. I thought about the Buick. I thought about the coupons. Then I thought about Craig's golf club. I picked up the phone and I started making calls. I did not cancel everything at once. I want to be clear about that too. I did not want to create an emergency. I wanted to create a mirror. The first thing I stopped was the grocery delivery. I figured that was the most manageable. It was something they could absorb if they chose to. I called and removed my card from their account on a Friday afternoon. That Saturday, Renee called me. "Mom, our grocery order got declined. Did something happen with your card?" I said, "My card is fine, honey. I removed it from your account." Silence. The kind of silence that has texture. Why would you do that? Because you are 41 years old and Craig is 44, and between the two of you, you bring home enough money to buy your own groceries. More silence. Then, "I can't believe you're doing this right now." "I'm not doing anything right now," I said. "I'm just stopping something that should have stopped a long time ago." She hung up. Craig called 20 minutes later. I did not answer. He left a voicemail that I saved. I want you to know I saved every voicemail, every text from that point forward. Gerald had told me to, but honestly, I already knew. Craig's voicemail said, in part, that I was being vindictive and petty and that I was punishing the grandchildren to make a point. I listened to it twice. Then I forwarded it to Gerald. Over the next 6 weeks, I canceled or removed myself from the remaining 93 payments in stages. The car insurance came off in week 2. Renee texted me 14 times that day. I responded to one. "Your insurance agent can set you up with a new policy. It takes about 20 minutes." The gym membership came off in week 3. No call about that one, which told me something. The mortgage supplement, the extra amount I had been quietly adding each month to keep them from falling behind, that came off in week 4. That was the one that mattered. That was the one that changed the air pressure in everything. Craig called 4 times that Friday. Renee called twice. Then Craig called again and left another voicemail. His voice was different this time. Less angry, more afraid. "Dorothy, we need to talk. We're going to be short this month. I don't know if you realized what you were doing, but we can't just absorb this. We need to figure something out. We need to figure something out." I played that message 3 times, not out of cruelty, out of something closer to grief, because I heard in his voice the first honest thing he had ever said to me. They had built a life that required my money to function, and somewhere along the way, they had stopped seeing that as something to be ashamed of and started seeing it as something they were owed. I did not call back. What happened over the following 2 months, I learned partly from Marcus and partly from Renee herself in a conversation that came much later. Craig lost his job. This is not something I caused. He had been on thin ice at his company for some time, and the timing was its own particular irony. Without my supplements and without his income, the mortgage fell behind. Renee picked up extra shifts. The golf club membership lapsed. Both car payments went late. I heard from Marcus that Renee had called him asking to borrow money. Marcus told her he would help if she was in genuine crisis, but he said something to her that I did not ask him to say and did not know about until later. He said, "Renee, do you even know how long Mama has been covering for you two?" She said she knew about some of it. He told her the number, 94. She did not call Marcus back for 2 weeks after that. My grandchildren came to visit me in May. Renee dropped them off on a Saturday morning, and she looked tired in a way I had not seen before. Not frantic tired, but humbled tired, which is a different thing entirely. She stood at my door and she looked at me and she started to say something and stopped. I said, "Come in, Renee." She shook her head. "I'll pick them up at 4. And she left. I spent that Saturday with Tyler and Sophie baking cornbread and watching a nature documentary about elephants. Tyler asked me why his mom seemed sad lately. I told him that sometimes grown-ups go through hard patches, but that his mom was strong and she was going to be fine. Sophie fell asleep on my couch with her cheek on my cardigan. I sat there in the quiet and I did not feel victorious. I want to make sure you hear that. This is not a story about winning. There is no winning when your daughter is struggling and your grandchildren are caught in the middle of it. There is only clarity, and clarity has a cost. The real conversation happened in June. Renee came alone. She sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I had counted 94 items at 2 in the morning, and she put her hands flat on the surface the way people do when they need to feel something solid. "I owe you an apology," she said. I let her talk. That was the most important thing I did that day. I did not interrupt. I did not say "I told you so," or "do you know how long," or anything that would have made it about me. I let her talk until she was finished. She talked for almost 40 minutes about Craig, about the pressure she felt to maintain appearances in that neighborhood, about how the money from me had started to feel like just another line item instead of a sacrifice, about the moment she heard the number 94 and could not breathe. "I didn't think about what it cost you," she said. "I just kept thinking about what we needed." I said, "I know. I'm sorry I said you were living too well." "I know that too." She looked at me. "Are you going to forgive me?" I thought about that question carefully before I answered, not to be dramatic, because it deserved a careful answer. "I already forgave you," I said. The forgiveness was never the question. The question was whether I was going to keep participating in something that was hurting both of us, and the answer to that question is no, not anymore. She nodded. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "What about Craig?" I said. She took a breath. "We're in counseling. I don't know how it ends, but I'm done letting him make financial decisions that he assumes you'll cover." That was the most important sentence she said to me that day. Craig called me 3 weeks after that. He left a voicemail, a real one, not an angry one. He said he knew he had taken advantage of my generosity, and that he was sorry, and that he was working on himself. He did not ask me for anything. He just said he was sorry. I called him back. We talked for 11 minutes. It was not warm exactly, but it was honest. And honest is a place you can build from. I want to tell you what my life looks like now, because I think that part matters. I still live in my house. The one Renee said was too big for just me. I have a reading chair by the window and a backyard where I grow tomatoes and 2 kinds of basil. I joined a book club at the library where I used to work, and we meet on the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of every month. I bought myself a new car last fall, not extravagant, but new. New enough. I take a week in September, and I drive to see my sister in Savannah. I have done that twice now. The first time I went, I sat on her porch on the second evening, and I watched the light come through the Spanish moss, and I thought, I could have been doing this for years. I do still help Renee sometimes, but it is different now. It is help that is asked for, named, agreed upon, and received with gratitude. It does not go to golf clubs or grocery deliveries for people who have 2 incomes and a gate in front of their house. It goes to Tyler's school trip to Washington, D.C., and Sophie's birthday party, and the one time Renee's car broke down and she called me before she called Craig because she knew I would answer and she knew I would help and she knew I would help and she knew I would not make her feel small about it. That is what love looks like when it has been cleaned up and made honest. I think about that Tuesday morning in March sometimes. The coffee pot in my hand, my daughter looking at her phone. What I know now is this. There is a version of me who would have set the coffee pot down and said, of course, sweetheart, and gone home and found a way to free up more cash. I had been that version of myself for 8 years. She was very tired. She had very good manners. And she was disappearing a little bit at a time, like a book left out in the rain. The version of me who stood in that kitchen that morning and felt something shift. She was not cruel. She was not cold. She simply decided that 67 years was long enough to wait before taking her own life seriously. 94 payments. Every single one of them said, "I love you." What none of them said, what I had to finally say out loud was, "And I love me too." If you are in a season where you have been the one holding everything up for people who have stopped noticing the weight you are carrying, this is me telling you that the door is not locked. You can put it down. You are allowed to put it down. The people who love you back will still be standing there when the dust settles, and the ones who are only there for the payments, well, you will learn what you need to learn about them too. Thank you for spending this time with me today. I hope something here found you where you needed it. Take care of yourselves out there. I mean that.